Hello, podcast listener. Today's episode of JJ Meets World features Executive Director of the Red River Zoo, Sally Jacobson. Wait. You might be saying we already interviewed her. Well, good news. This episode takes place at the Red River Zoo instead of at our studio. We mic'd up. We got to walk around the space. It's going to sound a little bit different, but boy, oh boy, you get a private guided tour by the head honcho over at the Red River Zoo. You're going to love it. Plus, Tucker and I talk about how we feel more for things like dogs and kittens than we do for you, the listeners. But first, a word from our sponsor. This episode of JJ Meets World is brought to you by Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. Natalie has a proven track record to get your home sold faster and for more money. She is consistently focused on her clients' needs and wants throughout the entire process and make sure that they are well taken care of. If you're looking to buy or sell, reach out to Natalie today. On average, Natalie sells a home every 3.74 days. That's at least 2 a week. And last year, Natalie earned her clients on average over $4,000 above list price on their homes. And you don't have to take our word for it. Here's some of the great reviews Natalie has received. I was overwhelmingly impressed with Natalie and all the Hatch team. She was very responsive and responded to all of the emails within an hour. She gave great advice and encouragement from the listing and pictures, the offer, and all the closing details. The marketing team knew exactly how to promote my property, and I was pleased by how soon and easily my property received an offer. I was actually dreading selling my condo, and Natalie did such an awesome job that I felt like I really didn't need to do anything. The thing I most appreciated was that she really listened to what I wanted to do and respected my decisions. I would definitely recommend Natalie and all the Hatch Realty team. They made this process so wonderful. That was from Diane. So listen, if you're in the mood to buy or sell a home, give Natalie a call right now. You can reach her at 701-388-9338. Natalie, Natalie, at hatchrealtyfm.com, or you can go to livefargomorehead.com. That's livefargomorehead.com and find out some information. Huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring JJ Meets World.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
Days before this recording, there was a notice on an app I use called the Nextdoor app, which verifies that you live in the house that you live in, and then you can communicate with your neighbors. So if there's a lost dog or if someone needs a roofer. There was a notice about guinea pigs that had been found in West Fargo, and if they're yours, to call the West Fargo Police Department to claim them. So, first of all, I find it funny that a cop's job was to go pick up and then care for some guinea pigs. Mm-hmm. Because when I think of a police officer in that moment where they're like, I'm going to get into this. Like, no one joins Starfleet with the idea that you're going to be the one who vacuums the bridge at night.
This story does raise all sorts of questions.
It does.
Did the cop find it's plural, multiple guinea pigs?
It looked like it was about 6.
So were they like loose, or were they in a cage together that someone left the cage somewhere?
They did not say. So part of me wants to think that someone abandoned this pet, which is unfortunate, right? But it's not like they were baby guinea pigs. These were full-grown guinea pigs. So is it possible? Also, guinea pigs are a pack animal, so it wouldn't have been totally weird to think that someone spotted all of them together.
Right. And I would really like clarification on how they were found, because if they were just free-range guinea pigs at that moment, that's some serious dedication of that officer to go, all right, I've found 4 so far. Something tells me there's 2 more around this briar patch somewhere. Let's keep digging, fellas.
You guys, let's put a water bottle out and see if we can attract some over here.
No guinea pigs left behind on my watch, guys.
I have not seen whether or not they were returned to an owner or if they are now going to become property of the city of West Fargo. But it did make me think, What if the city did take control of those guinea pigs and they made them like a little mini guinea pig dynasty for the city of West Fargo, where they are all given an honorary role as part of the city government? And we can really get behind this because people love animals, even people who don't think of themselves as pet people.
Yeah.
There is something about an animal video when you watch it. There's something about sort of the magic of a creature who inhabits the same earth and has the same wants that you do,
right?
But is not you.
A lot of people find it easier to target their empathy towards animals than fellow human beings. I'm definitely one of them, because the relationship is just different. But yeah, I mean,
here's an example. The movie Volcano came out the same summer as Dante's Peak. Two movies about volcanoes at the same time. What's going on in Hollywood? There's a scene, the movie of Volcano is what happens if a volcano erupted in the middle of Los Angeles. Tommy Lee Jones plays this emergency manager. And so there's a scene where it's lava once it's above the ground, right? And it's magma below.
Sure.
You're not one of those guys who was obsessed with volcanoes as a kid?
Never.
Oh, really? I thought your love of dinosaurs would have led over to a love of volcanoes.
Yeah, but it was the meteorites that did it, right?
Okay. And they're
death from above.
What's the difference between a meteorite and an asteroid?
I don't care.
Oh, God. Well, I believe it's lava. So
lava's the difference.
Lava is flowing down this street. And I remember seeing this in a packed crowd at Safari Cinema in Moorhead, Minnesota. And there's a fire truck that's been overturned, and there's a fireman who's trapped inside the cab of the fire truck. And there's a reporter who's on the phone reporting about what he's seeing. And the lava comes and the gentleman dies. He burns alive inside this fire truck. Audience is obviously moved, but no reaction. You know, you don't hear sobbing anywhere in the theater. 2 minutes later in the movie, the lava is moving through a residential neighborhood, and there's a little dog, like a little beagle, who's in a house. And this woman's just like, my dog is in that house. Help him. And the dog barks at the lava as it's coming through the house, and then grabs his bone, runs through the doggy door.
I'm already hurting.
Yep. And the crowd cheered. The crowd cheers when the dog makes it out, and the woman is reunited with her pet. And I remember as a kid thinking, nobody cared when this human being died. Trying to help other human beings. Oh, absolutely not. But emotionally completely taken over.
I feel like we all sort of assume that if it's a human, they're like, they probably partially deserved it. That's our underlying thought. The whole reason why the John Wick movies work is because they killed his dog.
Right. That's a big deal.
Then we all thirst for revenge when we see that.
Did you ever see the movie Keanu where about the cat? Yeah. See, we love animals. And that's why today's episode of JJ Meets World is special. So for starters, we took it out of the studio and we recorded it live at the Red River Zoo here in Fargo, which is a very special place, celebrating its 20th year in 2019. It is a place where people have gone for weddings, for education, for just afternoons. My wife went there today before we recorded this because she was jealous that we got to go the other day.
And she didn't get a private guided tour by the executive director of the zoo.
That's right. So Sally Jacobson is our guide. And the idea behind this, in my mind, is not only do you learn about the zoo, but if you're just going to the zoo for an afternoon, you can pop your headphones in and get this guided tour with Sally. We got to watch the wolves do their wolf thing. We got to see, we got to see like the vet center where they do all the veterinarian type thing.
Yeah, she even piqued our interest in something called the Viking Forest.
Yeah, Tucker's very excited about that.
I'm so ready for that.
We found out that they've got one giant manure pile that they put everything in, like on the outer parts of the grounds. We found out about the life-saving measures taken to save a baby calf in the camel exhibit. This is a pretty gripping episode if you love animals.
And if you're a frequent listener of JJ Meets World, you'll notice that the audio sounds different. We're trying new stuff, going out of the studio from time to time. We're using different mics. You know, there's wind, there's other people. So apologies if you
there's
don't like
children
the way
not being tasked by their parents to be quiet, even though they see something's going on.
Running wild.
I hope that you guys really enjoy this episode. And remember, if you're in the Fargo area, whether you're on vacation or you live here, stop on out to the zoo. Their memberships are available all the time. redriverzoo.org. Great events nonstop. Everything from Zoo Brew, where they invite adults to come and enjoy a tasty craft beverage while walking through, to the overnights for kids that they host. So many great events going on at the zoo.
Also, if you like this episode, you should check out our previous episode with Sally Jacobson, the number of which is blanking on me right now, because that's the one where in the intro, JJ's chair breaks within 3 seconds of him beginning to speak, and I don't catch a breath from laughing for 10 minutes.
Well, thanks for bringing that back up.
Oh, you're welcome. That's
folks,
greatest hits right there.
go back and enjoy that previous episode after you finish this episode of JJ Meets World.
JJ Meets World.
JJ Meets World is at the Red River Zoo. Sally Jacobson, thank you very much for being our guide today.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. This is really a fun idea.
So can we start with a quick history of the Red River Zoo?
Yeah, this is a really important year for us. Actually, this is our 20th year of being open. And our zoo is really unique in a couple of ways. One way I always say is like maybe the less fortunate way, and then there's a super awesome way. The less fortunate way is that we, from the very get-go, we have really developed through earned revenue and the generosity of our community through philanthropic gifts. It's unusual in that most zoos receive some form of municipal funding for quite a few years to get all their infrastructure done and things like that. So here at I always call us small but mighty, we've done all of what we've created out here through the power of our community, which is really fantastic. The other way that we're unique is that we specialize in cold adapted species, or we call them cold climate species. So animals that do really well in areas like North Dakota. They might not just have to be from North America, you might find them from Northern Asia, you might find them Northern Europe. So we do have animals from all over the world, but it's much different. I think a lot of times when people come to zoos, they expect to see African megafauna like elephants and zebras. And we believe, other zoos definitely can take care of them well, no matter what your climate is, but we're here dedicated to those cold adapted species.
That's very cool.
This is kind of a hopping day, too. There's like kids running everywhere. There's a wedding going on here right now. The animals are like, what's up?
I think it's a great day to be here because it shows all the facets that you use the zoo for. It is not just a place to come and learn and educate about these great animals, but it's also a community gathering space.
It is. It's very much we call it creative placemaking, and we're trying to create a very special space in our community. And we really have done that. When the zoo was given to the park, the land was given to the park about 23 years ago. And when it was donated, it was completely flat farmland, and there was literally 7 trees on it. So as you walk through the zoo today and you see like hundreds of trees and rolling hills and streams, all of that was built by zoo staff and volunteers and members of our community. So it's pretty crazy.
Well, let's start with this glassed-in area right here in your lobby.
Yes.
So
I love this exhibit.
do the animals in here change? Did you change the residence?
We haven't changed the residence out in here, but we certainly could. And this one's kind of an exception. As I just mentioned, we're a cold adapted zoo. We have cold climate animals, but we do have some warm climate animals, both here in our admissions building and then back in our education department. So this is our South American exhibit. So we have our saki monkey, we have a 2-toed sloth up in there, Milo, and then a 6-banded armadillo. And what I love about this is that it is a multi-species exhibit. So the animals are living with other animals that might be living where they would be natively from, and they're having to kind of deal with things that behave differently than they do. So it's a really nice system that we have here.
And these guys are not shy. I've noticed they've been showing off, especially this monkey has really enjoyed seeing all the faces and new people.
I am going crazy for that monkey's ears. That monkey has ears that are like baby ears.
They're like a little human
They're like
ear.
a person
Yes.
ears.
And there's white-faced saki monkeys are different because they're very sexually dimorphic, so the males and females look completely different. So the ones we have in here with the big white faces, those are males. And these two are actually siblings. We have Comet and Zeke. One is really outgoing, and one is a little bit more shy, which is quite interesting. All the animals have they're individuals, so they're all different. So when you come to the zoo, I can't remember if it's Comet, I think, who's in the front. He'll usually be the one on the front, and he sometimes puts his hands and our paws up against the window for people to put on. While his brother will have mirrors hanging in there. One day, we do different enrichment, so every single animal in the zoo gets some kind of physical and mental stimulus that's new every single day. And we're trying to encourage species specific behaviors so that they have the choice to behave in ways that they would in the wild, but also keep them mentally alert and physically strong. And one of the things you can do for primates is give them mirrors, because they can recognize themselves in mirrors, and they use mirrors for all sorts of shiny
very
objects.
egotistical.
Right. But I noticed one day that he was always faced away from here that particular day, and he was looking at the mirror, and I was trying to figure out, okay, does he have self-recognition going on here? What's happening? And I realized when I started to move the mirror, he would move, or I would move, he would move the mirror, and realized he was watching people.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that cool?
He's using his mirror to watch people. They'll even use the rocks in there to do their nails. I mean, it's pretty amazing to watch their behavior. So yeah, these are pretty fun. And that little guy over there, that is our six-banded armadillo. That is Rolo.
He's awesome.
Isn't he cute?
Yeah, and he's very much, I can tell, he's the chatty Cathy of this this group, because he really likes to know what's going on. Yep.
Yeah, it's bursts of energy though, and then he's just like out. He sleeps on his back and he runs in his sleep. It's just really adorable, his little feet.
When I was a kid, I was obsessed with dinosaurs, and my great aunt in Cincinnati would take us to the zoo there because she was tight with a lot of the people there.
Yeah.
And I was obsessed with the armadillos because they look like ankylosaurs. So anytime I saw any animal that was like remotely like a dinosaur, so come see the armadillo.
Yeah, they're
Red
really
River
cool.
Zoo.
Do they really ball up and like roll?
They ball up pretty good. They don't roll, but he'll ball up. That would be like a reaction to protect themselves. And they actually are fantastic swimmers. They float really, really well. They have a lot of fat in their body, and they float. So
They're the
sometimes we'll bring a
pontoon
little
of
pool.
animals.
They are.
That's nice.
And these guys are not the same as the ones you might find in North America, in Texas or someplace. It's a different species of armadillo. So, and then of course Milo, who's up. Oh, he's right there. It's almost like he's on a hammock.
Oh yeah. The two-toed sloth.
The two-toed sloth. Oh, look at this. This is great. He's right in the front. Often he's in the back, because of course sloths don't move about too often. They have very slow metabolism, so they're going to spend a lot of time just relaxing. But we do. He does move around several times a day, so if you're lucky enough to get out when he's moving around, it's pretty fun.
When a movie comes out that features a particular animal, I'm thinking Zootopia came out, and the sloth worked at the DMV.
Yes.
Do you get a bunch of kids who now become super interested in the sloth because
Yes.
they've seen it in the movie?
Yeah, it's interesting too that certain animals will just kind of become popular all of a sudden too, not even related to a movie or pop culture, but it's like, oh, how come everybody is super interested in octopuses right now? I don't know what it is, but we try to be, it's interesting. But yes, those movies, they actually do have zoo professionals that assist with those movies to kind of make sure that they are accurate to the species behavior, and that's really cool.
Well, all right,
Okay, should we head out into the zoo?
let's take a stop into the zoo.
All right, wonderful.
All right, so if you come out of the main entrance into the zoo,
Yeah.
and you take a right, the first thing we arrive at is this shelter, this plexiglass and wood shelter.
Yeah.
And what are we looking at in here?
So this is our North American porcupine exhibit. So if you go into the zoo and you go to the right, that's our North America. So the first exhibit here, North American porcupines. This one we just opened last year. It's a fantastic exhibit. We do have 2 porcupines right now, Daisy and Olivia, and we're expecting a male fairly soon to come along our way. But what I really love about this exhibit is one, that it's almost all glass, so you can see them from wherever you are standing and wherever they are at in the exhibit. We also put a lot of thought into whenever we design an exhibit. People are always asking what's new at the zoo, but you also, in addition to bringing in new things to do, new animals, you want to refresh the older ones, because as our knowledge of that species behavior increases as an industry or as animal behaviorists, we know that we need to change how we're housing them for their welfare. And so these guys were on the slot for quite a while to have a new exhibit done, because their old one was over 20 years old and we needed to get a new one. So this one, what I love about it, we tripled the amount of space that the porcupines have. They have living grass, living trees, and then in the back you see those 2 dead trees. They're actually we have poles into the ground, so those trees can be pulled out and moved, and we put new ones in. That way you're changing the climbing structure that the animals have too. So I just absolutely love this. And then we've got 2 of them here. Today's a hot day. They do have an indoor building, but it's not too hot for them, so they're outside. But one of the things people ask is, how do you keep your animals cool in the summer? So they all have indoor areas that are cooled for them. But like we can do creative things like right now you see her leaning on that big rock.
Yep.
We freeze boulders overnight. In our freezers, we freeze big rocks and boulders, and you put them out, and they lay their bellies on them and cool down.
Really?
So, yeah.
And then, do people ever have problems where they get stuck by the quills? I mean, do they shoot quills or only when you touch them?
Oh, that's a really good question. So they do not shoot quills. That's kind of an old wives' tale. What they do is they'll back into you or hit you with their tail. But if you approach them from the front, they're really quite fantastic.
So these would be perfect for like at the club.
Yeah,
that's what these porcupines are for.
Don't approach them from behind. And these guys are trained because of all those quills. Of course, it makes our vet checks really difficult. So they're trained. We have these little, like almost like gymnastic bars that they're trained to stand up on, so that the vet can check their tummies and check their feet and things like that.
Well, am I right that like what we're looking at right now, that's their hair we're seeing, isn't it? The quills are like
yes,
buried
the quills
underneath?
are underneath. If you were to go if we were in there and you could feel them right away, but mainly towards the back area there, that's where they get quite intense. And they do get a really thick fur in the wintertime. So they're almost like clouds. They're so soft in the winter.
I remember a few years ago coming here, and you guys had a baby porcupine. It might have been one of these.
It probably was Olivia, yeah.
Okay, and there was a caretaker standing out, like you could walk up and pet this baby porcupine, and it blew my mind that I could pet a porcupine.
I know, yes.
But maybe it was too young to get scared, or did they just get used to people?
They get used to people, yeah. You can kind of tell, based on the species and the individual, which animals might be good ambassador animals, and porcupines work really well for us for ambassador animals. So these guys, we're actually doing a new thing this summer where we're creating more experiences that people can have with the animals. We've hired an experienced ambassador to be out in the zoo every day, giving people unique experiences. And so one of the things we're working on right now is rolling out people being able to go inside with a porcupine along with a staff member.
And what do they eat? I'm going to ask you this at every
about
animal.
Everything.
I'm guessing onions.
They do eat a variety. This morning for breakfast they had beets and they had apples, carrots, and they have this like kind of porcupine diet, almost like a dog tail kind of thing. But they do get a variety of fruits and vegetables. We try not too many fruits because you don't want to give them too much fructose, but yeah.
Well, that's very neat. And then inside this area, I see the grass is very long. Do you ever mow inside of these things, or
Yes.
most of the time do you let it go as wild as it can?
Yeah, it's a good question. It depends on the animal, what we do in order to kind of maintain the grass. So these guys, if they're locked inside, we can mow without really disturbing them or getting them scared, but it really depends on the species. The wolves are a little bit more challenging because we do have to take them off exhibit, and we have big lawnmowers we go in with there. Some exhibits you just have weed whackers that you go in with. So.
I guess the grass is nice bedding though too, at least at this length.
Yes, we've
looking
had
at it right now. It looks pretty comfy.
Yeah, that
It does.
looks really nice actually.
It does look pretty good.
We just don't want it to get too out
If
of
this
control.
wasn't full of porcupines, I'd lay down there.
Yes, and in this viewing area, again, being resourceful, this was actually an old bus stop that was donated to us,
cool.
so we've recycled it and upcycled it into a public viewing area.
Very nice. All right, well, let's move along.
Yes, we'll move along to our otters. And one thing, people think that there's not a lot of space at our zoo to grow, and I think that, coming from somebody within the industry that's like, how do they not think that? If you start to look as a guest, look back that way, there's tons of room over there and tons of room.
So can we talk about this too? How do you get new animals? I can't
Yes.
imagine you're just breeding animals in
No.
here. What happens when it's time for a new exhibit?
Yes, that's a really wonderful question. So with our exhibits, first of all, we do have a very well thought out and intense collection plan of which animals we will or will not have at the zoo. And that's based on that animal's needs, the expense that it's going to be, the training, all that kind of stuff that we might have for staff, as well as the exhibit itself. But to acquire new animals, we're an accredited institution, so we're accredited through the AZA, which is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. And so there's kind of basically a big website that if you're accredited, you can reach out to your colleagues and say, hey, I'm looking at building a North American river otter exhibit within the next 2 years. If there's somebody that's looking to, move their river otters out, if you have babies, that kind of thing, reach out to me. And so that's kind of how we do it. We don't buy animals or anything like that or sell animals. And we're really strict here at our zoo on breeding. We don't breed animals, just willy-nilly. Although people love to see baby animals, we're very moral about it. The only time that we breed animals at our zoo is if we've been given the go-ahead to breed an animal by the SSP. And what the SSP is, there's SSPs, species survival plans. for most animals within zoos. And that's a group of people made up of zoologists, geneticists, animal behaviorists that are looking at the genes of the animals, looking at the life history of them, and then telling you specifically which animals your institution can breed. They give you recommendations. The thought is that you're trying to breed the most genetic diversity within the captive pool that you can, so that if that animal were to go extinct in the wild, we might be able to have a very healthy, sustainable population for 100 years. So that's kind of the big nerdy stuff behind the scenes. So,
And I suppose there's a lot of this is people don't understand, where they say like, oh, well, gosh, we found this moose. They captured this moose. Well, we'll just give it to the zoo, and then the zoo will just take it.
Yeah.
But years of fundraising, infrastructure planning, all go into all of these exhibits. So, for example, we're in the otter exhibit now.
This one.
This doesn't happen overnight. This doesn't even happen in a year's time.
Yeah, exactly. I can't even remember how many years we had this. It was on our plan since the zoo opened 20 years ago. But then it was a good couple of years that went into getting the fundraising in place and then the design in place, and then before the animals ever even got here. So we do have a 20-year strategic master plan that maps out the specific species that we may or may not have in the future, which helps guide us. These guys came. I love this exhibit because this is what we call an immersive exhibit. So the intent of it is, when we designed it, is that it looks like you're going inside of an otter's den in the Red River Valley, to try to give people that feeling that there's not this separation between them and this animal's environment, to kind of mimic that. And I love these big, wonderful ponds. So we do have a big waterfall, 2 ponds, and then a big pond in the front. And we do have 2 North American river otters in here. And of course, I think they're up there looking at the people. The pond itself is heated, but we don't keep water in it all winter just because we could not afford the expense of heating that. So instead, they do have an smaller indoor pool in their holding building, where they go at night in their little bedrooms. So they have water in there all year round. But this is great because we like to fill it with snow. And they love to kind of sled and play in the snow. So
They're kind of one of the really popular exhibits here.
they are, because otters they're so charismatic. They move so much, and they're just kind of little comedians,
They eat off their tummies.
They do.
It's one of my favorites.
These guys don't. That is actually sea otters.
Oh,
Yes.
now I'm embarrassed.
Okay.
Now I lost my zoo card. Just rip it up.
Is that how that works? If you have a zoo fact wrong, you get kicked out? I'm noticing, too, that there's paw prints in the floor here.
Yeah, this floor is really great. So those aren't really from, that the otters didn't actually run through here, but we did get some cast meat of their feet when we were doing this floor. I love this floor because originally it was just going to be a concrete floor, and we're like, well, that's kind of boring. We have all this beautiful, mimicking of their environment. How can we make it look more naturalistic? And so we dyed the concrete when we poured it, and then we had our little junior keepers, who are kids that are 11 to 15 that are here pretty much for the whole summer's education program. They went around and picked leaves and put them down to give it this pattern that you see. And then we took casts of the otter's prints and kind of ran them through as though the otter was running through the building.
I love how you have the limbs of trees and little rocks coming out of the wall too. So you said this is an immersive.
Yeah, we call it immersive, where you're trying to give the humans the feeling that they're in this different environment, an environment more unique or close to that you'd find the animals in. And then I do have to point out that we do all of our own signs in-house. I have in my office, we have a sign machine. It's really fantastic. For a zoo our size, we have wonderful signage, and we can change that out.
And I can report
whenever
they
we
are
want.
not using papyrus font, thankfully. So we're good. We're good, everybody. Come check out the signs at the zoo.
So we're in the North America right now. How many continents do you have represented at the zoo?
So right now we have North America, Europe, and Asia. So I think that's what we got. We don't have anybody, from South America.
I guess that makes
Oh
sense,
wait,
'cause-
South America, we just passed that exhibit. What am I talking about?
I guess that's where you're going to find those climates at anyway.
Yeah.
So there are going to be continents you just wouldn't find.
So in our plan, what we have is North America, what do we call extreme Asia. We've got
do you
Children's
do
Zoo
like
Farm.
X-Tream Asia?
Maybe we'll see.
Surge.
Extreme Asia.
Brought to you by Surge.
We have our Children's Zoo Farm, and then in the future we'll have an area which I'm calling Viking Wilderness. So we've got the whole thing mapped out.
That sounds exciting. Viking Wilderness?
I know, right? Viking Wilderness.
That sounds amazing.
coming to you. Yeah.
When?
Just depends, because some of the animals would be ones that we could acquire more, earlier on. So that would be, reindeer, stellar eagles, things like that. in the future, before I retire, I would definitely love to break it up and have some more aquatics or have aquatics in our zoo. When you're looking at the zoo's collection plan, we always have had Arctic animals in our collection plan. But I want to tie it into the community. I like to tie humans into each area too, as we are part of the environment. And there's so many kind of rich Scandinavian heritage here in Fargo, of course. And so if you start to look along the coastline of Scandinavia, you find the same animals you're going to find in the Arctic. So you're going to find walruses and jellyfish and puffins and fantastic animals like that. So
Very
but
cool.
it's a matter of, again, you have to take one step at a time.
Right. I'm just thinking, I just really want to go to Viking Forest really bad.
I know, right? Yes.
I'm already ready to go.
I know.
Can we go now?
I mean, we'll load them up on the Viking ship over at the MCOM Center and just
There
bring them
you
back
go.
by hand.
Well,
huh?
see, what I'd love to see is all, like, each area should have more play spaces and they should be themed with that area of the world. So I'd love to see, like, a little Viking ship that the kids, you know, like a swing, or a big one that was shaped like a Viking ship or something like that.
All right, as we come out of the otters on the right here, we've
This
got
is-
kind of a little paddock.
Yeah, so this is a little one, and she's actually not on exhibit right now. She is under veterinary care. It's Esther, our gray fox, but she'll be returning very soon. But she's one of them that we've made an exception. Earlier I said we get all of our animals from other zoos. But there are occasions in which we can make exceptions to that. If the animal's within our plan, if it's something that, you know, obviously we can afford to sustain for a long period of time, all that kind of stuff. And so she was one that had, I believe she had been a confiscated pet. We get a lot of calls, again, we get a lot of calls about people who have things that they should not have and no longer can care for them. That we can't accept them all. The problem is, you know, we have such an extremely bad exotic pet problem in our country that every zoo is overwhelmed with people trying to, you know, get rid of these animals that they realize maybe don't work for them anymore. So we can refer out certain animals. We can refer out to different areas, but you get an overwhelming request. Yes, I mean we get calls from everything from, you know, snakes to I've had calls about chimpanzees or giraffes. I mean it's just insane what people have.
Having a chimp is a bad idea.
So this one I do want to point out real quick because it's kind of like, what's going on here? After we pass our fox, there's this big green building that says NDSU. So this is our Conservation Research Center. So the zoo does a lot of things behind the scenes that people aren't aware of, and we're trying to make people more aware of the holistic things that we do. So this here is actually a research center. So students working on their wildlife biology PhD at NDSU, PhD candidates, actually in the back there, are doing behavioral research on native, could be birds, small mammals, bats. And so that's always going on, you know, each semester, and then they can present on their findings here at the zoo. It's kind of a win-win because it gives the students from NDSU additional spot to do research and the zoo to talk about some really kind of cool things that are being done for wildlife in our communities.
Previous guest Britta Lee on the show has a zoology degree. This is Britta Nelson, Britta Lee, goes by Britta Ann all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's great that you guys can team up with a local college like this, and it gives them, I mean, hands-on experience, and who doesn't love a course description that includes like, and you'll be spending one day at the zoo every week.
Oh yeah, right, and they're caring for these animals back here. And really, you know, the zoo is fun, but we are an education institution, and we want learning to be fun. And so I think this is a really wonderful way to do that.
All right, where are we heading to next,
Let's go
Sally?
over to the wolves. They're a fun exhibit. Everyone loves the wolves.
I think people harbor under the idea that zoos are meant for children.
Right, zoos are for everybody. And of course, people with small children, they bring them to the zoo, and then when they become teens, we kind of see people fall off. But we really do. I mean, people of all ages love animals. People of all ages are concerned about the environment, or people of all ages love their community. So we try to do adult-only events, like we do the wolf feeding. We also have Zoo Brew, which is a beer sampling event, and we do concerts and everything, because again, it's all about community. So let's see if I can get them to, hopefully they'll pop up in a little bit here. It's kind of, they're being a little lazy.
Well, it's hot. If I could
Yes.
lay down in the grass today too,
Yes,
I would
I
as
know,
well.
it's such a hot day. A little tip, the best time to visit any zoo is usually right after the zoo opens or shortly before it closes, because that's when the animals are usually going to be more active. So this is our our gray wolf exhibit. I love this exhibit. It's a little cabin when you're walking up. but it's themed to look like a trapper's cabin, and that allows us to tell the story about what happened to America's keystone wildlife in the 1800s due to trapping and westward expansion. Most populations were just decimated. You've probably seen pictures yourself of all of the buffalo hides and things like that. But then we decided as a country to do something about that. So it's really a great conservation success story that we can tell. And then also it's really wonderful because it's heated and it's cool. The floor actually is, we've got floor heat in a bathroom. So in the wintertime when it's quieter, we can actually have cocktail parties in here, Christmas parties, Girl Scout, Boy Scout sleepovers, all sorts of cool stuff.
We should record a special podcast episode where we're just hanging out with the wolves all night.
Yeah, right?
It's cool at night because when you flip the lights on in here, they can really see well inside. And so sometimes they'll be pawing or biting at the windows.
Recently in our community, we had a big news story about a wolf-dog hybrid that was roaming like the area. And at one point, the zoo was quoted, because I think they just talked to you guys at some point, maybe, or someone in the area. Did they reach out to you about that pup?
Yeah, they had reached out to us several times, and we were working with the police department as well to try to give recommendations as to where he might be placed, because of course everyone says, well, why doesn't the zoo take him? Well, one, he would not survive if we put him in with our wolves, of course. That was one major reason. But again, too, with those hybrids, you can't guarantee that the vaccinations will work. So there's that rabies thing, and so that would not be, you couldn't guarantee that it wouldn't have rabies. So that's something we would not introduce to our pack as well.
When it's time for these animals to get a vet checkup, or how do you get them to just like be like, hey, come on over here? You're not like tranquilized darting these things or anything, right?
That's one of my favorite things to talk about. So I'm glad you brought it up because that's really it's pretty cool. So one, we do have a full-time vet on staff here at the zoo, as well as a full-time vet tech. So we have veterinarians here at all times. But all of our animals, we work on using operant conditioning. So it's a training behavior. So we train them to do different behaviors. We don't train them to do, say, tricks per se, but you train them to things that allow, one, our staff to work with the animals more safely, but two, that allow the animals, again, that choice to participate. Do I want to participate in this behavior? Rather than do I want to be, restrained or put under? We wouldn't want to do that. You only do something like that if there's some kind of emergence situation. So all the animals are trained. So the wolves actually, they have different colors. There are shapes in the back there that they're trained to come and stand on. They have recall training. The problem right now we're running into is our older wolves are fantastic. They've got that down. Our older wolves were hand raised by one of our keepers here, so they're very habituated to humans. But as those wolves grew and aged, of course, we lost one to cancer. We put him down. And then we ended up with when we had 3 wolves, we had a huge change in the social dynamics, where the female just decided that's it, and she went after this male relentlessly, to the point where we thought she might kill him. So we had to put him off exhibit. We were switching, and we now moved him again. We reached out to our colleagues in the industry who's looking for a male wolf. He's in Bismarck, and he's the alpha there. He's fantastic. So then we had 2. So the plan was we will get pups and bring them in, and we'll have the old ones off exhibit, the new ones on, and we'll switch who's on exhibit throughout the day, because it's very difficult to introduce young ones, to older ones. But when we got them, and in the back, we had them in their little back off exhibit area, they're yelping like puppies and stuff, and the female, you could just watch by her behavior, she was so curious in like a really calm way. So we decided, well, let's put Ella in to see what happens. And we put Ella in, of course, with all the safety precautions in place. And she just took over like a mother and grabbed them by their scruff of the neck, and there was no problem. So we were able to integrate both of them. So we do have both our senior, older wolves, and we have our young ones in all together. So
it's a story that kind of gets repeated a lot as you hear about, older animals taking in younger offspring that aren't theirs. But for whatever reason, that maternal or paternal instinct is still there.
Isn't that quite interesting?
It's really, really cool.
Oh, I kind of...
And so, how many are there total now?
We do have 6 wolves.
Whoa.
Yep, so this was... Together. Yep, they're all together.
So a lot of them are, I would call like blondies. right?
Yes, they're lighter shades, yeah.
But there's one dark.
Yes, one darker
gray.
one. And when we first got him, he was almost black, and then he kind of turned red. And now he's like a dark gray. Oh, they're going to be howling and fighting for everyone. This is fantastic. I love that you can see their really natural behavior here. One thing that I think is really cool, you mentioned the feedings. We do feed our wolves full deer carcasses, so they get a full deer carcass once a week. So we try to replicate again what they might eat as prey in the wild. It's really cool. So if a deer gets hit by a car in town, the police will bring it in. It's passed away, obviously. The police will bring it here, and then we're able to freeze it and then thaw and feed to our wolves, rather than feeding them, some other kind of non-realistic diet.
Right.
It's kind of a win-win
And
for
so,
everyone.
I mean, what do you do to prep it? I mean, do you just literally throw the thing in there, or do they get it cut
Yep.
up, or?
Yeah, no, we don't cut it up. We let them do what they would do. So again, I said we have to freeze them for 60 days, make sure that everything's safe. Then we thaw, and then we take the wolves off exhibit, and we just drag it in there, set it in, and we let them eat how they normally
do you
would.
like hide it a little bit, and so you get to watch them like sort of sniff it out?
You can, and one of the things you can do for enrichment was really fun is because they are so scent orientated. We can do like blood trails. Sometimes you'll take and make blood trails through the exhibit, and then follow it up and hide like a box full of sheep fur inside of it.
Yeah.
And so they're hunting and having to look to find whatever this new thing is. The enrichment can be such a fun for humans and fun for the animals as well. But again, it's encouraging them to use their natural behavior.
I mean, they are so, right now they're immediately to my left, and they are so much bigger.
Yes, they are. And right now they're kind of scrawny looking this time of year. They've lost most of their big fur, of course. In the winter, they are really, to me, just quite impressive. Just beautiful, beautiful.
I noticed that the tips of their ears all look like they're severely irritated.
Yes, they're not too, well, they do have swat on them, so some of that coloration could be from the swat. Again, that's one of the things they're trained to do is to come up and then let us, through the fence, put the swat on their ear to keep the flies off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the same thing
So
they
the
put like on
medication.
cows and stuff like
yeah,
that?
to keep the swat flies off. But where I got to where we have the younger ones, they're a little bit more difficult. So they're taking some more time to get to do all the behaviors we want. But they're learning. They're learning really good. Oh, they're all going for a drink of water.
So, how is there like when you're creating an enclosure like this? Because obviously, one of these animals gets loose in the city, it's a big deal, right?
Oh yeah.
So, do you say, gosh, it's recommended that the fence is 10 feet high, so we're going to go 13 feet high?
Yep, we always go above
the recommendations.
The best thing you can do is go above the recommendations and go as heavy as you can with security.
There are no red pandas, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you about that red panda later because that's a whole different story.
There must be a sort of worry too in the neck of the woods where it's not unheard of. We get 18 inches of snow in a night,
right?
And all of a sudden now they're a foot and a half higher than they were before, or massive accumulations throughout the winter. So how do you stay on top of that to keep the animals safe?
It's a lot of work in the winter time. The weather, because that is something. If it blows, the snow starts to blow. So we have to clear all the exhibits every day in the wintertime. And we do have staff that live on site. So, and then I myself will come back if there's some other kind of storm going on, because you really do need to monitor all of that. So you got to look out for the animal's health, the animal's welfare, the animal security. But then the other thing is you have to look for the people's security, because even when you build an exhibit, with the dig barriers, the turn back, and all these, this fence and that fence, you still have humans that are going to be silly sometimes and jump those barriers and jump that or whatever.
That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah, be silly. So you're always designing for both the animals and for your guests.
I have the good pleasure of working with someone from the North Dakota Game and Fish Department, and he says the same thing all the time. He says, these are wild animals. And it doesn't matter if they're in a zoo, it doesn't matter if they are along Highway 10, they're wild animals, and they're going to protect themselves from you. And even if you don't mean them harm, they don't understand that. So zoo safety.
Yeah, zoo safety. Stay on the pathways. Exactly. Don't stick your arms in places and stay on the pathways.
Well, speaking of pathways, why don't we head on
all right,
to the
let's
next
go
one.
out the pathway.
I spent a lot of time in Chicago, and of course Chicago obviously has the Lincoln Park Zoo, which is amazing, but it also has the Shed Aquarium, right? So what's the definition where you draw the line of this is an aquarium versus this is a zoo that just happens to have a lot of aquatic animals?
Yeah. I think it really is on how many aquatic animal exhibits you're going to have. Like how many gallons of aquarium do you represent? Maybe there's like kind of this turning point, you know? Like this percentage of my place is, like most of them, aquariums, you're going to find aquariums are aquariums. Does this make sense? Because you just said, but like a zoo, you know when you're at a zoo, but they have some great aquariums, whereas an aquarium center is specifically just on aquatic animals. It's amazing. The behind the scenes at aquariums is just incredible to watch. And you look at all of the really like gigantic filtration systems and things like that. I just love the behind the scenes stuff. I think at any zoo or aquarium, because to me it's more fascinating. Yeah, absolutely. So one thing people always ask, why don't you have polar bears? It's like, well, you know, a polar bear exhibit's going to cost about $30 million to build.
Whoa.
Because the interior, not only do you have to have all that safety, the really hardcore safety stuff on the inside, but that's got to be cooled. And that water is cooled. And then you want to, you know, so it's a huge endeavor. But when someone does it right, it's just like, mwah, it's magic.
Well, we've arrived inside of the bald eagle exhibit.
Yes.
And so what I think is neat from the get-go is when you walk in, it looks like you're meant to shut these doors.
Yeah.
And that's how you gain access into this display. Is that right?
Yeah, so the doors, the reason we have the doors is normally we don't have this fence in the front here at all, this mesh. So we just have an unobstructed view into the eagles. Because the eagles that we have here are non-flighted. The eagles that we have and that you'll see at other zoos, we're not hatched at zoos. Their animals are injured in the wild typically. So they're protected species, as we all know at this point. So if a bald eagle is hit by a car or runs into a power line and goes to a rehab center and they can't rehab it, they will often place it in a zoo. So ours actually are non-flighted. One is actually his whole wing, his right wing had to be amputated after he was hit by a car. And so we got a new eagle in this winter. And we were told that he's non-flighted because he has the tip of his wing and different things. And he's non-flighted, but man, he can kind of go up a ways, you know? He could go about 7 feet and then he can't go any further. So of course he wouldn't survive in the wild, but I thought, I'm gonna put this fence up here until we get to know this individual a little bit better.
Sure.
Yeah, it's beautiful animals. There's a lot of permits that go on with having eagles. You have to have a separate permit for housing them, a separate permit for if you're going to take them out of the exhibit at all and do an education, of course for breeding. And every feather in there we do have to collect and send to the National Repository.
Really?
So it's one question you get from people, oh, can I have an eagle's? It's like, you absolutely not. We have to number those. There's a lot of paperwork. That's kind of cool.
I also note that a couple of the places we've stopped are named after people who've obviously donated some money.
Yeah.
This happens to be the Robert Dawson Memorial.
Dawson.
This is my great uncle. My great
is it
uncle
really?
Bob, yeah.
Oh,
And
that's
he had
awesome.
a real passion for the community. Both
Yeah.
he and my grandfather loved places where the community could gather and the things that made Fargo special.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't surprise me that his family would want to be very involved, especially with the bald eagle, because they're super patriotic dudes
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So this is really cool, really neat.
Yeah.
Do you get approached a lot by people who say, God, we had a loved one and we'd really love to do something at the zoo
From
for
time
them?
to time we do. Usually people want to do something like a memorial bench, or so I try to come up with a bunch of different offerings that both our guests will enjoy, or of course an exhibit offering if that's something that they're interested in. So there's really a wide variety, and for a wide variety of budgets. Somebody might want to congratulate their son for graduating high school. They might not want to spend $15,000 on whatever. But we do have our pencil fence in the back. It's $50 and that name will be on that pencil fence. Or we have this for $150. So I try to do a lot of different levels. So anybody that wants to participate and see their name on something at the zoo or be a part of it can.
It doesn't sound very couth, but like, hey, if you want to give us some money, we'll figure out a way to make it work for you, right?
Yeah.
We're all chasing those philanthropic dollars for those folks who want to make a mark in the community.
Yeah, but we want to make it truly make it work for them. So a lot of times they'll say, oh, what's that? And it's like, I want to sit and visit with you. I want to get to know you and kind of what would fit and what works. So over here, this area kind of gets overlooked. And it's actually, I think, one of the most beautiful areas of the zoo. And I call it our watchable wildlife area. So you can come and see who's visiting during whatever time of year. It used to be filled with all kinds of ducks that we had, our North American ducks in here, and people would come and feed them and pay to feed them. But then in 2016, avian influenza breached our flyway up in this area. It was even found all the way down to, the closest it got to Fargo, of course, was Sioux Falls. But with this new strain of AI, we had to really rethink what animals we were keeping in here. Because if it actually got close enough to the zoo, we'd have to take all of our birds out and put them off exhibit into off exhibit holding to protect them. Because of course, if one showed up that had AI on our facility, we could be forced to cull all of our birds. And so we just did not have enough housing in the back if an emergency like that were to happen, to house all these animals for a long period of time. So at that time, what they did is they put up a big net to kind of discourage wild ducks from coming here. Then wild ducks carrying AI, we were offsetting that problem. But when that happened, the guest experience, I think, was kind of lost, because our ducks that we had got full right away, and they just went and hung out back there, and nobody could ever see ducks, and everyone was so disappointed. So I really rethought out the problem, and then last year worked at it to change this. So what we did is this water system here it's self-contained, so it doesn't go into the rest of the zoo. So if wild ducks come in here, it's not going to contain anything in the rest of the zoo or contaminate. So I got rid of all of our North American ducks, and these guys are just wild ones, and we just put out food at a specific time in the spring so we can encourage some ducks to come in, but not too many. But if you look back, I love these cattails that come. It's just really, it makes me feel like I'm in the lakes area. Mm-hmm. And so one of my goals I want to do is to create a tall walking bridge through the whole thing that starts over at the Wolf Outlook and goes all the way through, and so people could stroll through and enjoy all the wildlife in here. And I could just see it lit up like that scene in The Little Mermaid, the Kiss the Girl scene. So eventually here, when I get some partners interested in the bridge, we'll do that.
So let's take something like wild ducks. Mm-hmm. Do they ever land in the enclosure of a predator? Oh, do you ever get a little call over the radio that says like eagle has landed? Oh yeah, yes, yes. It's been a couple of owls. It's going to be the wolves if you're going to have something like. And every once in a while, somebody goes in there, and the wolves have a great time. Well, I'm sure. The duck may not, but such is the circle of life, right? We spend a lot of time moving wild ducks from places they shouldn't be, especially when they're little. When they have all the little tiny ducklings, that one's staring at us. Isn't that funny? Mm-hmm. Look at he's listening. He's like, what is she saying? It's quite interesting. So, is this about us? Yeah. But what happens is like the ducklings can get through the little fence over there, the walkway, and then they panic, and then the mom panics and runs back and forth. So in the springtime, we spend a lot of time either moving the babies back over or moving the mom over. Do you see a lot of geese during the time of the year when they're migrating? Yeah, this year I think we just had a pair of Canada geese in here because we were trying not to get too many. But then they had a nest in the back, so it was really fun watching. I think they had 5 goslings. They were around here earlier today, so they're probably in the back there somewhere. And you've got this nice little feeder too. Yes. This is something that I remember from zoos of my childhood, right? Yes. It was full of candy if you were at the bowling alley, but at the zoo, it's full of some kind of a feed. Yep. Mm-hmm. Do you get people who get pretty stoked about this? I love watching little kids because they'll just throw the whole handful at one time. People love to feed animals if they have that opportunity, right? And they get a feeling, I guess it's a whole different interaction. So we do have it here by the ducks, and then we have it back in our children's zoo farm area as well. Well, let's keep moving along. Let's keep moving. We're going to move past our old porcupine exhibit, and I can tell you what's in there now. There's a beautiful bride and groom over there. Yeah, to our left, you've got, I always call that the carousel house. Do you have a different name for it? Yes, it's actually the Dietrich family carousel, and so it's the Carousel Pavilion. We have a 1928 fully restored Alan Herschel carousel. There's only 4 like it that are still running. It's absolutely fantastic and super fast. So this is our Raven. So this actually used to be the porcupine exhibit, and I decided to modify it and make it a home for ravens. So these again are another one that was that exception. We didn't get it from another zoo. We did get these from a rehab facility through Fish and Wildlife. Ravens are unbelievably intelligent. There's actually a lot more research going on right now to show that they're more intelligent than parrots are, equating them to like a 4 or 5-year-old child, really, with some of their capacity that they have.
And so I was like, oh, we got to get these guys. So these ones, again, they were found, somebody found them when they were really little and took them in home and tried to have them as pets. And was giving them all sorts of weird food, not the appropriate diet. So their bones didn't grow in a way that would allow them to fly for very long periods of time. So they could not be re-released. So we got them from the rehab facility.
They're beautiful and massive. I mean,
They're way bigger than I
They're
thought.
both larger than my cats.
Yeah, they're huge, and they make these such amazing sounds. They do mimic, ravens mimic all even human voices. The one that ours will most often hear is, we have a horse in the back, and he gets 4 walks a day, and so they'll mimic his when they see him coming along the pathway.
Okay.
So we're going to head over here by our mule deer and white-tailed deer exhibit here. And now when you do visit the zoo, this is a pretty large exhibit, so sometimes you might not see them right away. You have to look towards the back. Typically, they're going to be in the back of the there.
Oh, I see him. He's up along the fence line.
And then they also love to come in this water and cool down too, so they'll be right here in front of you as well.
Horns versus antlers. What's the difference? I see you
Horns
got
versus
placard
antlers.
here.
Again, one of my proud of our signs here. So horns are made of bone center, and they're going to be covered in this keratin, almost like a fingernail in the center. So horns, here's the easy one. Horns don't come off.
Okay.
Antlers, they come off every single year. So they're made of bone, but they're not permanent. So they get that velvet over the top of them. So yeah, I think it's the easiest way to do it.
So something I've always been told. So like when antlers are growing in and they are rubbing them against a tree, are they shaping them? What's the point of that?
I think to my mind, it's almost like they're kind of itchy and scratching them. It's when the velvet's going to kind of come off. So they're kind of just getting it off of there. Yeah. So, yeah, these are kind of cool. I like it because you can feel how this is definitely bone.
Right.
This one would have bone in the center, but the outside is, definitely this one is kind of like a very dry fingernail.
It's like a spark almost.
Yeah, it needs like a mani-pedi.
Okay, let's keep
right.
moving along. So
Let's keep going.
we're heading towards the Dancing Crane Cafe.
We are. And again, that's our beautiful sign machine. We made all the decorations on there. That's exciting for me. So as you pass on the left side, you'll see our Asian aviary. So once you're in the Asian area, you can definitely go through and walk through the aviary. And then on the right side, we still have North America, so we have our prairie dog exhibit here.
What?
Prairie dogs are super fun. These guys, this exhibit actually goes down about 12 feet. So in the winter time, they have underneath the ground here, they have a series of all these sorts of little bedrooms and stuff. So in the winter time, these guys go down and they basically go into what we call a torpor. So it's almost like hibernation, and we don't see them again until the spring. So that's a big sign that spring has arrived in Fargo, is when the prairie dogs at the zoo start popping up.
Are prairie dogs, they're obviously a community-based animal. They don't go out on their own a lot?
Nope, yep, they live in these big colonies. And they're really, in a way, their role in the ecosystem is they're almost like Meals on Wheels. They're everybody's food. So one black-footed ferret could eat 100 prairie dogs in a year. So they provide a lot of nutrients to a lot of animals. But yes, these guys are adorable. And of course, ours are not fed to anybody. These guys live here. And actually, we have a fantastic one in our vet office. A couple months ago, we did find one baby that was not doing well, and his mother had just kind of left him. And his eyes were open, and he was really small and struggling. And it was to the point where we thought, well, he's going to pass away. So we made a choice. You have to decide, are you going to take him and hand rear him? And if so, what are you going to do with him? Because he won't be able to go back in with prairie dogs after being hand reared. But we decided to do that. So he's going to be our education animal, an education prairie dog. His name is Loki. He is so stinking adorable. I was just itching him up this morning. So right now he's still learning, but eventually he'll be harness trained. But this morning I had him out and they were exercising him, and he has one of those big giant exercise balls. I don't know about you, anytime I see an animal with one of those balls, it makes me laugh.
Yeah.
I can't help it. And he's just he comes to his name and he's just running. So cute.
So I've been to a couple zoos where they've got free roaming animals of some kind. I think in the Duluth Zoo they used to have a big peacock that would show its feathers to people.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever talk about that? Like, is there an opportunity here for something like that, or is that just?
That's a great question, because that's one question I get a lot. Is we used to have free roaming peahens, peafowls, and peacock, but I made the choice, which I kind of didn't like doing, because again, I like all the guests to be happy and but I made the choice to move them to another zoo. So one is that they didn't fit within our collection plan of being cold climate, because again, they'd have to be inside most of the year. Which again, if we have the facilities for it, that's fantastic. It's just not our plans. The other was when AI reached our flyway, because if you think about it, they're free flighted. They can go anywhere in the zoo, which means they can go potty anywhere in the zoo, which could put our collection at risk, or our guests if there was a disease that went through. So I decided to move them off to another facility.
Bye-bye birdies.
Yeah. All right, so we're the Animal Health Center. Is this your vet here?
Yeah, so we have our vet right on site. Right in front of us, a brick wall we're redoing. We had an art piece there that's being redone. But what I like about our Animal Health Center is there are windows so people can see what's happening. Like right now, there's not anything happening. If things are going well, there's not much happening. Sorry, the lights are off right there. But so when we do have pre-planned surgeries or things like that, we'll let the public know. And so, for instance, we had 2 of our older wolves had to have their couple of canines removed, or their teeth removed. And so we let people know ahead of time. Guests would come in and we would have another vet or vet tech out here talking about what our vet is doing, and they can watch the surgeries or watch. Wow. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Really cool.
Yeah, it's again.
People take you up on that? Did people take
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was fantastic. One day when we were just doing I can't remember if it was the pandas we were doing their biannual exam or whatever. A big group of 5-year-olds was all the school bus gets off, and they happened to be the ones here that day, and they could see the pandas up close and talk to the vets themselves and learn about animal health and how we keep them healthy. Correct
me if I'm wrong, but I'm really getting a sense of transparency between the zoo and the guests.
Yes, and that's what I want more and more of, because again, that's the stuff I get excited about, about all the stuff we do behind the scenes, and to me that's the most fascinating part of the job. So why not share it with everybody as much as humanly possible?
And as we reach the, northeastern part of the zoo structure here, we're on the farm.
We're going to the farm, that's right. So this was actually the old entrance of the zoo. This is where the zoo first started. And one of the things, as I had mentioned before, you're always refreshing. Our zoo farm, people love the zoo farm because that's where they get to pet the animals and interact and laugh at them or whatever it is. But it really needed a facelift. So when we decided to give it a facelift, we again wanted to look at it in a modern way. Okay, we want people to be able to interact with the animals, but we need a message there. And what is that message? And so I decided to do modern farming inside of this. Because a lot of places you go, they either tell the story of farming from the 1800s, or you'll see kind of a cartoon version. But again, me, behind the scenes stuff is most fascinating. We think about all the technology that farmers are using, specifically farmers in North Dakota, and what they're doing for stewardship for their land. That's a cool story. So when you go through this building, we've partnered with North Dakota Corn and Soybean Councils to create a really cool play space. And it's all actually pictures of people in North Dakota that are involved in agriculture in some way or another. If they're a soil scientist, if they're a farmer. And we included all those people in the conversations as what we should have on the signs. And what are we doing in North Dakota to make sure that we're stewards of our lands. And the farmers here really are. So it's kind of a cool story.
Well, that's very neat. I also appreciate the fact that as a city kid, this is something obviously that's supposed to be near and dear to my heart because I'm in an egg-based state.
I know.
And so I get that experience that I never had as a kid. I didn't have parents who or grandparents who farmed. But then on the same token, when the tourists come here too, it's a little bit of history about the land that they're visiting.
Yes, the place that they're visiting. And the same thing with me. I went crazy while I was learning from this because I can do, give me an animal, I can tell you everything about that animal. How do you grow corn? I know that sounds silly. Or what is that crop that's growing? I had no idea. And so we have this really cool combine in the back there. It's actually a big combine cab, and kids can get in it and push all the buttons. And I was like a big kid when they dropped that off. I was like, what's this button for? And you actually do see adults going in there when they think nobody's looking. It's really fascinating.
I love whenever they've got one of those fake cow milking machines where it's like, a simulated milking, and I'm like, I've always dreamt about doing this, but I'm not good at it.
Yeah.
So if it's anything like the real thing, I'm no good at it. Well, this is a hands-on area. I think people kind of get the gist of it on their own.
Yes.
So if we curve around here, where are we going to start going to?
We're going to go over to Asia.
Oh, lovely.
And then also when you're in the zoo farm, make sure that you go past, we have a new nature playground in the back with all this natural material for the kids to play on and our beautiful pencil fences. But now, ooh, it's nice and getting cool, isn't it?
It is.
It's starting to cool down, which is great. So we're gonna go past our Asian garden. This is our red panda exhibit over here. Eventually the red panda exhibit will be expanded up this way, and so your viewing will be from the Asian garden, which I think will be quite spectacular. But this was our first real big contribution here in Fargo, was our conservation work with Chinese red pandas. When the zoo was so tiny and young, they made a significant investment to bring these pandas in and become part of the captive breeding program. And now, of course, he might be inside because it's pretty dang hot today, and red pandas need to have cooler weather, so when it's hot at a certain temperature.
Is that,
oh no, there he is.
He up there?
Yeah, he does have choice to go in or out. I'm surprised he decided to stay out. So,
Well, I heard we were
this is
right?
Waveland, excuse me. She is the female there. So we actually, at one point, were the leading breeder of red pandas in North America. So chances are, if you go to another zoo, it has probably been to or been born at Fargo.
Really?
And we're constantly moving red pandas behind the scenes as part of that captive breeding. So we do have an off exhibit area in the back.
When,
so,
I mean, are you commonly getting requests for red pandas? I mean, is there a waiting list?
so what it is, for the red pandas, it's one of those SSP ones. So we don't breed them unless we're told to. And so that's all pre-planned out. And so we'll get some call, like, you didn't move one from DC to your zoo with that fact that you can breed next year. And then the offspring are going to go to this zoo and that zoo. Again, to make sure that you have that a nice variety in the genetic
What do
pool that
the
we have.
red pandas eat?
They eat, this is funny, they do eat a lot of bamboo.
Okay.
Yeah, bamboo is a huge part of their diet. They also have this thing we call panda biscuits, which also has some bamboo in it, as well as all sorts of other vitamins. They do get fruit. Again, we don't want to give too much fruit and vegetables as well. I don't know if you wanted to talk about Sheffield, who's been the bane of my existence.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think anyone who's followed the news in Fargo over the last couple of months knows that you've got an escape artist.
We do have a little
living
escape
here.
artist. His name is Sheffield. So the first time, and Sheffield really is one of those individuals, one that he beats. He takes, here's our knowledge of these animals. They can't do this, and this, and Sheffield's like, I don't read your books. I do that, and that, you know? So Sheffield, the first time he got out, he was in our breeding facility, so he wasn't on exhibit. It's a back area there, and we've had pandas there for over 20 years. We've had, dozens and dozens of pandas. No problem with how that structure was built. But Sheffield, honestly, we got here, we do our rounds every morning. He wasn't there. And there was no indication. There was no fur along the top of the fence. There was no indication if was he stolen, did he climb out, what happened? And he actually had been able, as far as we could tell, there was an unbelievable stretch that he would have had to make on this turn back, and probably just got like one nail over it and be able to pull himself out.
Yeah.
But we did have to go public because after a couple hours, we're starting to be very concerned about our animal, knowing that he's most likely on property but in a tree. But you look at all the trees, they're so dense. We decided to call on the public for help. If you wanted to come help us look through these trees. But also you wanted people to know, just in case they'd heard anything, if somebody had taken him or something like that. We want the public to be our friend and to be our helpers. People came out and supported us. It was amazing. We did locate him. He was right over by Gander Mountain, so just right over on the other side of the tree. In a tree, as we had thought. He's recall commanded, so he did start to come down, but then the tree was so dense that he couldn't. Like, he'd get down and he's like, yeah, and then he'd lose interest in it and go back up. And we didn't want to force him down. You definitely couldn't, sedate him or anything, because the tree was just, I would stand under it, I couldn't see him when I was standing literally under the tree.
So he picked the perfect time of year to do it. He picked probably the perfect time of day.
And I tell you, finally by 11 o'clock, I said, okay, I'm going to climb up the tree. He's going to climb down when I go up. He's not going to want to be by me. So we made basically a temporary fence around the whole tree using fence panels. We had catchers on the inside, outside. We had all our staff there. And they all held flashlights, and I went up the tree. And it was so dense, an owl flew out of that tree, and I didn't see the owl. It was like, And I was thinking, oh gosh, well, what if he's right in front of my face? Like, I don't know what's going on. So I keep going up to the top. I get to the very top of that tree, and I hear somebody say, here he comes. And then I hear a little bit of running, and no lights. So I'm at the top. And I'm so happy because that meant they had them, and of course they had them down, but I had to, in the dark, get down. Now, we knew then that we had to modify the exhibit again because we found the exception, the one that has figured out something different than anybody else has. So while we were modifying that, we had put him on this exhibit. Because this exhibit, people automatically thought he got out of here because it doesn't have a top. But this is 59 inches high right here. And the trees are great in the center, but they are trimmed back. Like there's really not a way that pandas don't jump. So he shouldn't be able to get out of this. And we put him out here, and we got the other holding area fixed, and it's like meaning topped and redesigned. But he seemed to be enjoying himself, so we're like, well, let's just leave him out there, as long as he wants to be. And then, unfortunately, in July, one of our zookeepers was working, and she was using a weed whipper and ran out of battery, and she wasn't thinking and left her shovel and rake inside the exhibit when she went to get a new battery. And Sheffield is like, ooh.
Use that moment.
He's like, I see now. And it was actually kind of the video itself was adorable. But from my perspective, it's like, oh no, this is not supposed to happen. So it wasn't as though there was any design flaws or anything like that. It was, yep.
When something like that happens, is there ever a discussion of doing something like saying, well, why don't we put like a tagging method on them, like a GPS? On my dog, yeah. I think I've got a little GPS tracker that's on her collar.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. So all of our animals actually do have those little, not GPS, but they all have microchips. But so whenever something like that happens, it's not like we just kind of go on with our day. Anytime, even with just that where it's obvious there was a shuffle in here, we have to have several meetings, both with our staff, of all the different things that could be gone through and what might need to change. But then I have to write extensive reports. I mean, I had to write a 55-page report to the association that accredits us and have that reviewed by all of our peers. So they review this as well. Are you up to standard? Was there something different that should be done? And so each is case by case. So we did modify the one in the back. It was up to standards, but clearly this individual had a little bit stronger and figured it out. So we redesigned. This one I don't think we need to redesign because honestly it was because there's some human error. Human error, no matter how much you drill and train, it's bound to happen to anybody.
Now you also have some absolutely gorgeous koi fish.
Yes.
In this pond.
I know, aren't they beautiful? Look at that big giant white one there with the long.
White one with
yes.
the fancy tail.
Yes. So we do have koi over here. We have koi in all of the ponds in Asia here. And then in the winter time, we do drain the ponds, and then we have these giant areas in the back that they go into, and they do kind of go into a little hibernation type stage as well.
I keep goldfish, which are not koi, but they're very similar since they're all based off of carp.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love about them is how hardy they are, so that when I mess up on accident, they're less likely to lose my population than I am if I've done previous
That's why I always
ones.
went with goldfish as well. What I like, again, in our zoo, what I really like is that we do try to we have the living grass. We like to have water features as much as possible in every exhibit, as well as other living beings, so the movement of the koi. So even with the panda way up in the tree, you're still seeing life and movement and hearing water.
Here's a weird question. We've been in the zoo now for an hour and a half, and I don't really notice any stink.
Oh, thank you.
When I think of going into a barn, I think of a stink. I think of, even in a pet store, because there's all these animals, and you can smell they're all doing their business and everything
Animal
like that.
smells.
Is it just because it's open air, or are these things getting cleaned on a regular basis?
Yes. So they're cleaned at least twice a day. Is typical, but also we are outside. But then there's certain areas that in the back, like say the otters, if we were to go in the otter holding, that's sticky because that's where we have a giant filtration system in that's taking care of everything and keeping the water clean.
All that ammonia that's piling up in there.
Yeah. And then we do have a big giant manure pile at the back of the zoo, and I'm so proud of my staff because they're really good about bringing that manure back out instead of letting it pile up over the whole summer and doing one big trip. We do those weekly. So,
that's good. That's nice.
Nice and clean and enjoyable. And the porcupines are always a little stinky, but just as the animals, but not terrible.
But I mean, you know what I'm talking about? That smell, like when you're on a farm, right?
Yes. If you go into the holding areas, that's where I feel like I love going into the camel arena at night because it's got that hay smell, and you can smell that animal smell in there. So,
all right, I'm seeing a Eurasian
lynx. So these are our new girls. Oh, they're awake. That's good. Hopefully they'll move around for you. So we did bring these Eurasian lynx in this year. They're 7 years old. They are siblings. They are sisters, I guess you would say, because they're females. Absolutely gorgeous cats. And they love this exhibit. They love to just jump all the way even up there. I want to add one big pad area up there for them to climb and jump.
Right now we're watching the two of them lounge around, and one is cleaning the other's belly.
So cute.
And my heart is melting.
I'd love it if they'd stand up. They're really majestic, and their paws are huge, built for going through the snow.
So you're a vet, and you're even the people who are watching over these animals. When you bring a new animal in, is it like taking a college course because you've got to learn about this animal and about its habits and
so it kind of depends upon if we have somebody here that's already worked with those animals, and it depends on the species too, because we might send zookeepers to another zoo to learn from their keepers there about how they're caring for a specific animal. And then of course we do get extensive histories of each animal as well. Our computer systems are fantastic. Any animal in a zoo, I could look it up and get its life history. And so when they were dropped off, their zookeeper, there was a lot. I mean, this is months and months and months of communication, not only about the species in general, but about these specific animals and what their likes and dislikes are, what their medical histories are. So their keepers came and brought them up. It was pretty kind of cool.
I'm noticing a lot of pairs. So is there a feeling? Is there a mentality behind keeping animals in pairs if possible?
It depends again, and that's on the species. So if it's appropriate, like our fox is by herself because that's how she would live in the wild unless she had offspring. These guys, these two particular, they've been together their whole life, so they wanted to be placed in somewhere that they would be together. You wouldn't obviously find two siblings like this in the wild, but they wanted to be housed. They wanted to house them forever like that.
Their sign says Eurasian lynx, and below it says lynx.
Lynx, yes. So we always put the scientific name for the animal underneath. And some animals, their scientific name is not something too terrible. So like bison or bison. Lynx. Llamas is great. Llama glama. I'm like, I love it.
Llama glama.
But some are very difficult.
On your website, do you have a link to the lynx?
Oh, they're
Some
cute.
lynx
We do have a lynx. Yeah.
What do the lynx eat?
These guys eat. They're in the wild. They would chase after like hoofed prey, so like small deer, things like that. So they get a variety of meats here. They get ribs twice a week, like the rib cages twice a week. We do have a diet. It's a feline diet. It's made specifically for zoo animals. So it's primarily a variety of meat for those guys.
All right, and I'm looking at some camels.
All right, the Bactrian camels. This is one we get a lot of questions about. A lot of people see camels and they think of arid environments. And we've actually, when the zoo first opened, we used to get a lot of complaints like that's cruel to keep camels in North Dakota. But these are Bactrian camels, Bactrian with a B. They have two humps. So these guys come from, they can go up in the mountains of Mongolia. They come from very diverse environments, from very hot that can get extreme cold. So they're perfectly adapted for life here in North Dakota. And if you look at their body, how it changes over the seasons, like right now they're fairly lean. They don't have too much fur. But in the wintertime, they really start to bulk up and get quite a bit of fur. If you look at their noses can open and shut so that they can keep out the cold and help breathe in, warm the air as they're breathing in the winter. They're perfect for us. I have a cool story, and we had a calf born last summer. I think it was last summer, yes. So we have cameras whenever we're going to have a birth so we can monitor. And within the first 24 hours, she still had not nursed. She was standing and doing everything else, but not nursing. And with camels, that becomes quite concerning. If they go 24 to 36 hours without their mother's milk, they can get this thing called, I think it's like gut closure or something. They die. They can quickly die. And so this just shows how zoos work together. So right away, we were working with Minnesota Zoo. They have a wonderful camel collection there. With their experts, okay, we've tried this, she's not nursing. We milk the mother and we're trying to bottle raise her, she's not nursing. We're becoming concerned, and at one point they said, okay, well, she really needs a transfusion. of camel plasma if you want to give her a good shot. Of course, we don't keep,
Right.
but they do. They're much bigger. They have freezers and freezers, and their staff member said, if you can get in your car right now, I'll meet you halfway. And so, and she didn't get paid the rest of the day to do that, but she goes in her car. I go home, I have my kids, so I knew my kids are gonna whine about being in the car for a long time, so I kind of pictured like, I flew the door open, like, we're saving a camel! And they're like, hooray! And they run in the car. So we get there, we meet them halfway, get back, our staff's waiting, our vet's waiting. We IV her, give her that camel plasma. The next day she starts perking up, and then we're able to start guiding her, and then she was good to go. But I always like to tell that story because it just shows how we all work together. If you think about how many animals there are in the world, we really do, accredited zoos do need to use each other, to use each other's knowledge and staff, and we do all the time. We share our knowledge.
You guys must get a lot of school groups.
We do get a lot of school groups. It's really, really quite fun. School groups, daycares, things like that. And then we do have educators on site too that go out into the schools and try to partner with the schools because they might be learning, some kind of STEM activity related that is related to an animal, and we can bring out owl pellets or whatever it is. So this is our Wings of the Orient, we call it. So these are Asian birds in here. They're free flighted, so people can go in there. It's another opportunity to feed and see the birds fly above their heads, and quite beautiful. And we're gonna head over to Takin Ridge. So one thing we did introduce this year is camel feeding. And so pretty affordable. It's like $5 a person can come and feed our camels. So we're gonna do that daily as well, which is super fun. Get up close with the animals. Oh, this tree. We lost quite a few trees this year with those bad storms we had.
Oh, no.
Yeah, one of those ones actually blew off the whole roof of our our Takin holding. It's
So-
like 81 mile per hour winds.
I know that this last winter when we had just all of that snow, you put a call out saying, hey, bring your shovel and
Yeah.
you could use a hand.
Yeah.
So the community's involvement must be really important, especially when the
Yes.
unthinkable happens.
It is, yes. And our community, people want to help. They want to be a part of it. And not everybody wants to help by donating money. Some people want to help by giving their time, which is so much more precious really even than money is. It's also a way people can be involved. Well, here we go. And then of course, if there was a real emergency as well, all of us accredited zoos work together because if you had, say a zoo that happens to flood, there's only so many people that have the knowledge on how to move these animals safely. So whenever a zoo is an emergency, all of us pitch in and help and send our experts.
That's great.
Yeah. So these animals sometimes get overlooked because they're a hoof stock, and I think sometimes people just kind of walk past hoof stock, but these are quite fabulous. These are Szechuan takin. They are a national treasure of China, along with the giant panda. And so they actually came to the United States. Their first takin were given to the San Diego Zoo in 1987. And within 10 years of that, right, give or so, the Red River Zoo had takin. And so there's very few zoos that house takin and breed takin. And so within the industry, people get very excited. Zoo nerds get very excited that we have takin, and we've made quite a contribution to takin breeding and knowledge of care in zoos. Beautiful animals.
All right, so I have to make a quick caveat. I did find some papyrus fawn.
Oh, did you?
In the zoo. It's right here on the sign for the Szechuan takin.
So
sign.
I didn't make that.
So Sally did not make that.
I did not make that. No.
All right, well, if we're going to
So go see the
stuff,
takins. Don't look at the sign though.
I just saw one of the takins pee.
Oh, look
And
at that.
I was going to be like, I'm going to keep this on the
They're
down low.
really cool though, and the one thing that I keep thinking about, maybe it's just the hair pattern. Mm-hmm. It makes it look like they have really thick forearms.
Yeah, it does, doesn't
and
it?
they're almost lumbering like a gorilla might as it
Yeah.
walks.
That's what I was thinking, kind of the way the rear end is pointed down.
Yeah, the way that they look like bison, but they're really actually more, you could think of them more like a giant goat.
Okay.
Extremely powerful animals. Right now they're waiting because they know it's towards the end of the night. They know they're going to go inside. But these guys are actually fairly dangerous animals. So we work with them only protected contact, which means you cannot go in with them. And so we have a series of training panels back there. So the takin are trained to come in on command. They'll step on their scale so that we can weigh them every week. We do weigh all of our animals, depending on the species, weekly, bi-weekly or monthly. So they're trained to get on there and wait and go back to their bedroom. So it's fantastic what we can do through that opera conditioning and training.
They have great faces.
They do.
Their faces are
and the
fantastic.
rumor that I have heard is if you start to look, the movie Beauty and the Beast, the animators used takin when they were designing. It can really see it when you think.
I could definitely see
Yeah.
that.
Especially in the way that the horns, those are not antlers, but they're horns,
That's
correct?
right. Good job.
Thank you. I
And I
learned
think
something.
the nose as it comes down from the eyes.
Yep.
Because he's got that big snout.
Yep. And then our male is still pretty young, so he's still getting his thicker fur in and growing bigger. But man, they are just.
I'm always amazed when I watch a hoofed animal on rocks. Obviously, this is very boulder filled.
Yeah.
Because you'd think, well, they're not suited for being on that terrain, but those hooves have, adapted over
Yeah.
the years to make them great climbers.
I know, isn't it? It's you can watch on YouTube some videos of you're like, wow, some animals really in the mountainous areas. And yeah, this is great. And so what we do for these guys is we'll spread their food throughout and spread their treats throughout this whole exhibit. So they have to kind of forage a little bit for it every morning. And they do get browse. So we cut different branches of our trees off and these guys can eat it. One thing we always have to consider whenever planting a tree, bringing a plant in, is if it's toxic to these
Sure.
animals. So we have a whole giant list.
Do you ever give them like volleyballs to play with or anything like that, or do you
Yep.
leave them to play on their own?
No, we do. We give, it depends again on the species, but different species can have different toys and it has to go through an approval process that we have, set out. But yeah, they can get all sorts of different things every day. Like I said, every day we require the staff to do 2 different types of enrichment for these animals. So again, it could be one of those toys, or we like to call them toys, or something to physically stimulate them, or it might be a new smell, it might be a new food, a new object. Yeah.
I remember at the Duluth Zoo, their polar bear's favorite toy was a 1-gallon ice cream jug.
Oh, yep.
And they were like, yep, we've given him like $400 zoo,
I know,
specialty
right?
toys. And they're like, he likes the ice cream tub. Flips it up. Sometimes he wears it like a hat.
Yep.
It's his favorite.
I know. You can be really creative with those things because again, the purchase ones are really expensive. But you take the concept and you can take fire hose and you can make it into a really cool ball. So the fire department will donate their old fire hose here when they can't use it anymore. We've used it to make beds and to make climbing structures and all sorts of things.
Oh, that's very neat.
Being resourceful.
What are tours like here?
As far as
I mean, do people come in and arrange
Yes.
tours? Are there
Yes.
regular tours that
So-
you guys give?
Yeah, so we just started doing, as you go on our website, you can book a tour, and we have Tessa, who's our experience guide, and she can detail the tour kind of for what it is that the people want to learn and what they're interested in. And of course, I'm always open to just do tours whenever, because I love talking about people in the zoo. So right now I'm calling this Palace Cat Alley. So this is Elvira. Elvira is the 4th oldest Palace cat in any zoo in the entire world.
Whoa.
Dun dun dun, Elvira. So she is now retired. She's probably inside right now. She is retired from the breeding program, but and she has an off exhibit area. But I thought, let's put her out here for this summer. We might be redoing this. It used to be squirrels in this one, which were super fun, but they lived out their life, and so now we're kind of deciding what we're going to do in the future. Palace cats are quite important. Now we have 3, and people will probably wonder, why do they have 3 in a row? And that is because these 2 are actually always going to be here. These are part of our breeding program. Palace cats, if you haven't seen them before, they look like the original grumpy cat. They're a small cat, wild cat species from Asia, Central Asia. So they have really squished kind of heads. They're flat on the top, which I suppose helps them to kind of camouflage into their environment. But also they have circular pupils where cats usually do not. So they have a really unique look. They're extremely difficult to breed in captivity. One, they're only fertile for between 24 and 48 hours a year. Other than that, you got to keep them apart. And then the second is they have the highest infant mortality rate of any cat species. So 70 to 75% of their offspring will die within the first 30 days of life, because where they're from is so cold try to see who's. Oh, there's one out right over there on the top.
I was wondering if that was one of them in the next pattern.
She's over here on the top. We can go over that way if you look. Because it's so cold, they don't have any natural immunity. But we've had a resounding success here, really, truly. And I think the main reason is not, of course, the quality care that we give our animals, but the environment here so much replicates where they're from, the number of hours throughout the year of light versus day and things like that. But in order to, like, for example, our last Pallas cat litter that we had, that was probably a 3.5 year endeavor. We had to work with Japan, because the recommended male was from the zoo. So we had to do all this international paperwork to be transporting the animal in and things like that. Then we had to work with Cincinnati Zoo, and we'd send monthly samples so we could get the hormone samples, so we knew that we're putting them together at the right time. So it was several, years worth of work that went into that. And then when the kittens are born and you hold your breath and you overprotect them, we did kind of close off this area of the zoo because, they do have that. We didn't want anything to go wrong.
No stresses.
Yeah, just nothing to keep it quiet for them, since they had such a difficult time those first 30 days. And then they succeed and you're like,
That's amazing.
How many babies are in the litter typically?
We've had litters of 5. I think we've had 2 litters of 5 here and a litter of 3. So it really depends. Kind of like a house cat, I suppose.
Who's this?
This is actually Sam. Normally this is Stanley. This is our white-naped crane. It's a beautiful big crane now, and she's sleeping. So this is Sam. Normally you'll see one up here is Stanley. He's quite vocal, and he kind of watches out over people and dances quite often. But she is going to be moving to another zoo. There are only 100 of these guys in captivity, so they're quite important. Oh, she's totally sleeping. She's so relaxed.
Got some nice shade going on.
Yeah.
The grass is a perfect length to be comfy.
So Sam and Stanley actually are the most genetically valuable pair that there is. And so we've been trying to breed them for several years. Unfortunately, she doesn't like him all that much. When it becomes breeding season, she will try to kill him. She's just not into Stanley at all.
When you've got animals and they don't seem to take to each other, how long do you wait before you say it's time to make a call here?
Well, these guys we had, they probably had them for close to a decade.
Really?
We are committed to the animals. And we could have managed the 2. Like, we could have brought her into the back and had her in the off exhibit area and had another one. But because she is so important genetically, she should be part of that breeding program. And so they did find another male that she would be compatible with, that they would want, as far as genetically. So we decided, we're going to call it. And it's hard after so many years of trying, because you're thinking, we're doing in vitro fertilization, we're doing all this kind of cool stuff, and then it's like, okay, we're going to give up and try a new one.
What happens when an animal passes away?
So every single animal that passes away at the zoo we have a necropsy done, which is kind of like an autopsy that tells us exactly what happened, because we want to be sure, if it was a disease or what exactly happened with it. And then we determine, typically they're incinerated unless we want to use some portions for one of our outreach programs. So if we wanted a skull to be a wolf skull to be part of our biofax collection, then we do something different.
Do you guys have like a little private ceremony here at the zoo? Like, I imagine I lost a cat a year ago, and it was devastating to our family.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what it's like to be working with these animals all day long and to have to say goodbye.
The zookeepers are devastated. And that was something I learned early on in my career as well, because I would go home, like, you have your favorite animal that you worked with every day. But I had to learn how to, if you want to love animals and you want them in your life, you're going to have to learn that
each time I've ever gotten a new pet, I'm like, I know I'm putting a down payment on sorrow in the future at some point, but
then there's some of them
it's the trade-off you make.
Some of them touch your heart more than others, was harder, but it's always it's hard for the zookeepers, particularly in the vet staff, because they're the ones that are with them every day.
I imagine it's hard for patrons too, when you've got a kid who keeps coming back and says hello to Stanley over and over and over again, to find out that Stanley's not there anymore.
Well, a lot of your animals have fans that kind of follow them a bit.
Well, and the other thing is, we've been around 20 years, so a lot of our animals are getting older. But one of the best ways that I dealt with that was, we had this other cow, I think his name was Domino or something. People loved him. He had been here since the zoo opened, and he would lick everybody, and they just absolutely died. But he had cancer, and we knew and we were treating him for cancer, but we knew at some point we were going to have to put him down because it was terminal. So I just started writing on both on Facebook and through our email blast his story. Rather than just, one day he's not there. Here's his story. He has this disease. This is what we're doing for him. And then as it progressed, he had to wear these blinders to kind of protect his eyes because, of his treatments and things so we had a picture of him with his blinders. Okay, this is what we're doing and here's why. And then when it kind of became time where we had to make that choice, right after doing it, we just sent out those emails, Today was the last day, then we decided to end it because of, give him a peaceful, and people, the support was amazing. It's that transparency and being people so that they can alert their kid, okay, he's not, here's what's going on or whatever. If they come here that much, they care, right. And then if they're, to be honest too, if you don't do that, some people are anti-zoo, they think, we're just keeping these animals in cages or whatever. No. We dedicate our entire life to the welfare and well-being of these animals for a purpose, and so we need to share that. Because if an animal just disappears, people would say, the zoo just killed the cow. They didn't know that our staff has been working, doing radiation or whatever with this animal for the last 6-7 months and spending the night here to sleep to make sure he's okay. And that's a good story to tell.
I can see someone complaining about you keeping the cow and then going to McDonald's and getting some food.
We do get complaints on our current cow.
Really?
She is a retired Dutch belted dairy cow. So Dutch belted have really high hips. This is a good story, so I'm going to wait till he stops talking.
The time is now 7 p.m. and the zoo is closed.
Does it remind you of Greece?
We've closed down this zoo, everybody. Never closed down a zoo before. Yeah.
So she's a Dutch belt. Charlotte has a Dutch belted cow, so they have really high pronounced hips. But in addition to that, she's 17 years old, and so your body doesn't kind of do the same things when you're older. And she's retired dairy, so she's a little leaner. And so people see her, and even people that are used to seeing dairy cows, they see that rear end, and they think she's not being fed or cared for. And she actually, is supposed to weigh between 800 and 1,500 pounds. She's at 1,350, right where we want her. Because at 17, you don't want to put a lot of heavy weight on her, or she's going to have some arthritis issues. But if you see her from the front, she's like a barrel. Like, she holds her body up here. So one thing I kind of struggle with is how do we get that story out? Because if somebody complains about that, that means they do care about animals. But if they don't happen to interact with one of us or read the sign, how do we get that word out? Like, hey, we're on the same page. Here's what we're doing. She gets this much food and weighed this week and that week. And,
Well, I think about Domino, and it might sound weird to say this, but how often does a cow get to die from cancer? Right? How often does a cow get to have a long life where they get medical treatment for their cancer? I mean, Domino led a really good life here at the zoo. A much better life than most cows.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah, they do live longer and filled with people who care.
It's such a unique story. The animals who are here now, the animals who are here before.
The animals who will be here in the future.
I mean, it really is quite fascinating.
Yes.
So pumped about that.
As things go forward, as people are, meandering their way through to the end of the zoo, of course, you got a great gift shop.
Yes, we do have a great gift shop.
Great for gifts, not even just on Zoo Day, but if you've got a zoo lover in your life.
Yeah.
What are some things that, if like a common myth about the zoo that you wish you could let people know about?
I think the most common myth about our zoo is that we're small and there's no way we can grow. We have 32 acres. To give you an idea, Central Park Zoo is 6 acres. And so we have a lot of space to grow and also to change exhibits. Again, as you can change up exhibits. So we are not small, but the biggest thing I want people to know is that and again, small in conjunction with big giant zoos, but we're small but mighty because we are very purposeful here, and we are really dedicated to animal care, welfare, and conservation, and really truly saving wildlife and wild spaces. And when you come to the zoo, make sure you visit us. If you see one of our staff members, we love talking to everybody, we love answering questions, and we love getting suggestions as well.
I would say, here's a common myth about your zoo that I would dispel myself. You're open in the winter.
We are. We are open every single day. It's going to be quiet, of course. We're closed on Christmas. But throughout the winter, because I figure, if we're here anyway, taking care of the animals, working in the office, if it's a nice day in the winter, people want to come out and get outside with their kids. And it really, because we have cold-adapted animals, it's really a dynamic time to see them.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about the wolves. You're talking about an entirely different coat of fur on most of the animals.
They look totally different. And then you know what we do? We allow people to bring sleds in too, so they can go sledding on it. Yeah, tons of activities. Hot cocoa, roasting marshmallows, whatever we can do to have some fun.
Oh, this is very, very cool.
Yay!
Sally, thanks for the awesome tour of the zoo today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What's the website if people want to start making plans for their visit?
redriverzoo.org, and definitely check us out on Facebook. We have a really dynamic page.
A huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring this podcast. Folks, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, contact Natalie Deutsch today, because Natalie Deutsch is not only a previous podcast guest, she's somebody who's going to care enough to sell your property for top dollar. She's also going to find you the best price possible if you're purchasing a new home. Last year on average, Natalie earned her clients $4,000 over list price on their homes and sold them faster than the market average. On average, Natalie's selling a home every 3.74 days. That's 2 homes a week. Those numbers don't lie. Find out why Natalie is one of the top agents in this entire market. Get a hold of her today, Natalie at hatchrealtyfm.com. You can also call 701-388-9338 or go on to livefargomoorhead.com. That's livefargomoorhead.com. Read all of her amazing reviews and then listen to her episode of JJ Meets World. Thanks again to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of JJ Meets World and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes every week, you can donate to our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/JJ Meets World and donate today. Even as little as $1 a month can go a long way. Visit our website at www.jjmeetsworld.com or hit up our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites the kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, go to linebenders.com and you can find direct contact info for JJ. At what point do we realize that we are animals in the zoo of life and people are looking at us all the time? And if that's true, I would like to know what my official scientific name is. Jajicus totalicus?